Welcome back, BUSN 1360 students, and we're continuing with part 2 of our skill review chapter 4 project. We left off, we had finished instruction 12, and we're starting with instruction 13. But before we go any further, I want you to do a quality check. I want you to look at your workbook, including this FIN 103 worksheet and the FIN 104. Make sure that you have applied the correct theme, that retrospect theme. You can look at the dates and the information there. We've inserted the student, but only on the 103, not on the 104. So with that done, and with that quality check, let's continue. In step 13, they tell us that on the 104 sheet, because this sheet was copied from the 03 class worksheet, the student names and ID numbers are not those of the 104 class. So we must populate that information from sheet 2, which is in our workbook down below here. It says you will copy the student data from sheet 2 and then hide sheet 2 when it is no longer needed. Now, this is a note of caution here, and in your book, in your sim book, they actually have little examples of professional people giving about a paragraph that explains their story. And one of the people says that he was working in a workbook and he realized that it was referring to formulas and cell values that he could not see. And in that moment, he realized that something was hidden. So I want to emphasize that hiding something is not necessarily security. You can put certain locks on that. Then you have to have a system for remembering, and if it's password protected, where is that password saved? So you may want to think about that in terms of your strategy. Sometimes data is hidden just simply because it complicates things to have it displayed, but not because it is privacy information. You wouldn't want to have something like people's social security numbers or their salaries displayed where all somebody has to do is unhide it or hack a password, on a spreadsheet tab to get in. So be very careful about that. Back into step number 13. Let me move these instructions out of the way. They want us to go to 104, and this is where they want us to delete from A9 through B29. I'm going to click cell A9. I am going to scroll until I can see cell B29. I'm going to press my shift and click. That selects all that data, and I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard. Now I'm simply going to click in cell A9. I'm changing to sheet 2, and on sheet 2 they want us to copy from cell A2. Again, I'm selecting that cell, I'm pressing the shift key on my keyboard, and I'm clicking cell B20. I'm going to copy that, and I'm just simply going to Control C. Do you see the marching ants? That's what those little dotted lines are. You have to have those. If you lose those, you need to copy again because it means that it's forgotten what it is that you're trying to copy here. Now I'm going to return to the 104 worksheet, and in cell A9, I'm simply going to Control V to paste. Didn't that work out well? How about that? Now it says we want to hide sheet 2. So I'm going to return to sheet 2. Actually, I just right-clicked on it. And do you see this option to hide it? And it's hidden. You may be asking yourself, how do I unhide it? Well, especially when something's between two sheets like that, if you select this one at the end, hold your shift key down and select 104, you can right-click, and you notice that now I have an unhide option that I didn't have before. That would display that sheet. It would be just that easy to bring it back. So again, if people's social security numbers or their salaries, you would not want to use this method. So I've hidden that again. So let's return to our instructions, and we deleted the existing students on sheet 104. We copy and pasted the students from sheet 2, and then we hid sheet 2. On to step 14. It says William Simmon has decided to drop the class, so we need to remove him from the 104 roster. We're going to right-click the row heading and delete the entire row. So let me just move this to the side. We need to change to the 104 worksheet. And it said William Simmon. So do we see him down here in row 22? Now again, I am putting my mouse over the row number, not the cell. You can delete cells, for example, by right-clicking on cells. You can then have a separate step where you're prompted to delete the row and on and on. I want you to learn to do this directly. So put your mouse, do not be timid, put it over on top of that row, then right-click and delete. Isn't that handy? It deleted everything from cell A21 all the way to XFD21. So it deleted everything in that row. And it just moved moved things around a little bit. So now I have this row 22 selected, but it moved J. Parson right on up, didn't it? I'm just going to click someplace and save that. Let's go back to our instructions. We finished step 14. On to step 15. Now, a moment ago, we split the Excel worksheet into multiple parts so that we could keep the left side, viewing the names, and then move around on the right side. Well, another way that you may want to do this, that is a very, very, very common practice, is to freeze panes. And it says we're going to freeze panes to keep rows 1 through 8, there's our through symbol, and columns A through B visible at all times. We're going to do this on the 104 sheet, and we're going to click to select C9. Now, what is special about C9? It is 1 after 8, and it is 1 after C. So when you're freezing, you always go one cell past the column and row that you want to freeze. You can freeze just columns, you can freeze just rows. In this case, we're doing both, so we go one past. C9 is one past. Let me move this out of the way, and we'll do this together. So we need to go to the 104 worksheet. We need to make sure we're on that. And we need to click in cell C9. So what is going to be frozen? Everything in columns A and B, and that's our student name and student ID, and everything above the cell. So above the cell and to the left of the cell we've selected is going to be frozen. So this simply affects the way we view the spreadsheet, so view. If we come back over here into our window area, remember this is where we did split earlier. Now we're going to click on this drop-down box for freeze. And notice we could freeze just the first column because that's very common. We could freeze just the very top row because, again, that's just a really common thing to do. Or keep rows and columns visible while the rest of the worksheet scrolls. That's what we want. Now, do you see this really thin black line that is running to above and across here? This is indicating to me the part that is frozen. So if I needed to unfreeze, I would just go right back up here and notice that freeze has changed to unfreeze. And look at the black lines when I unfreeze. Do you see that they're gray? So I'm going to freeze. I want you to look at those lines. That is the indicator. Of course, the way I really know is now when I go to my scroll bar and I only have one, it's not split like we saw with the split. See how as I scroll across, my student name and student ID are staying the same as I scroll. Now, in essence, what's happening is we're hiding columns across the top. So again, just a little cautionary note. Don't think that this is a form of security, that, oh, people will never, all they have to do is look at the top and they see that the columns go A, B, Y, Z, A, A. So they would say, oh, something's missing. So, seeing that things are hidden is sometimes people try to use that as security, and it's not a good idea. Okay, so those are frozen. We see how that is working. Let me go back to our instructions. So we did select cell C9, we did freeze the panes, and we verified that they were frozen. Selected the correct point, and as we scrolled to the right, oh, we didn't scroll down, but the same thing would happen, so you can see that. On to step 16. There's an extra blank worksheet in the workbook, and we saw that. So we're going to right-click Sheet 3 and select Delete. There's just no need to leave those extra worksheets in the workbook, so I'm going to select that worksheet just to make sure. Yep, that's the empty one. Right-click it, and we're going to choose Delete. And it just moved us to the next available worksheet. Save that, because we're confident that we have done some good work. We've finished that instruction. On to step 17. It says we're going to modify sheet 104 to print as an attendance sign-in sheet. So first we're going to hide the student ID numbers by right-clicking on the column B heading and selecting Hide. So this again is not a big security. We're about to print something and we don't want that being printed. So let's see, 104, and we're going to go all the way up here to column B, and I'm right-clicking on column B, not the cell, but on column B, and down here towards the bottom, Hide. Now again, you can see here's column A, here's column C. What that effectively does is it changes the width of that column to 0. That's all that hiding is. How would we get it back? I would select before and after. I would right-click, and notice I can unhide. So it's as easy as that. Select that again, right-click, hide. That was step 17. On to step 18. On the page layout, it says set the page layout options. We're going to change this to the orientation to be landscape. Again, that's different. Portrait is tall, landscape is wide. And then we're going to change the margins so that they're narrow. And let's see, we're going to expand the width. Oh, we're going to use scale to fit, and expand the width and select one page, so that is one page and one page wide and one page tall. One other thing we're going to do, and this is kind of cool, we're going to click so that the checkbox so that the grid lines print. So we have a lot to look at. These are very cool print options in Excel. So the first thing that we're going to do, they want us to go to page layout, and they want us to look at the orientation. So that's this second button here. And we'll just simply change that to landscape. Now, before I do that, see the dotted line, because you know where it was for the portrait. So orientation, landscape. Did you see the dotted line? Look how far over it moved. You can even see at the bottom now, because the page is not quite as long, so you can see it running across the bottom where the page ends. It's a shorter page, right, because it's been turned sideways. Under margins, so again, page layout, and in this setup group, margins, we're going to go to narrow, and you can see what those settings are. This is very similar to Word. Do you remember setting the margins? The buttons were different, but these choices were the same. So you might want that to be consistent. Now, it says we're going to use something called scale to fit. I love this feature of Excel. I wish Word had this feature, quite frankly. So we were working in the page setup group. Now we're going over here to scale to fit. And they want us to expand this so that we can kind of have a more detailed selection. We want the width to be one page and the height to be one page. Well, so that we can understand this, can we start out by going to Print Preview? Now in Excel, and I think I talked about this in an earlier video, up here at the top you can customize these buttons. And so using this little drop-down box, you can add Print Preview and Print. You could add quick print, which will just send it to the printer. I'd like you to go ahead and select print preview and print. You can always unselect it later if you want, but I find it very helpful. So let me click that again to make it go away. As a reminder, this is from a previous video. This was to create something new. This was the print preview and print. Yours will be the very last button if you just now added it. There it is. Well, look at that. That is 5 pages as I look at the bottom. That's 5 pages. And, I mean, that's going to be all this paper coming off, and I can scroll to the, oh, look at that. I've got 3 names that kind of fall onto this next page, making it awkward. Oh, can you imagine? And this is going to be a sign-in sheet for students. And I guess, what are they going to check the boxes there? It's good. Oh, and then I have this blank page. Don't you hate that when you print all these pages because somebody didn't tidy up the document first? So I'm going back to page 1. If they're supposed to sign right here, don't you know that as you get further down here, like Stephen Happ, it might look like he has signed up here at Alan Holmes' name. It's going to get all off because there's no grid lines for this. So before we make some of these changes, I wanted you to see that. So I'm going to use this back arrow so that we're back to this page. And remember, we're on the page layout ribbon, and we did the first 2 little steps, but now we're looking at scale to fit. And they're saying that they want this to be 1 page. Now that is for the width. They want it to be 1 page wide. We just saw 5 pages, right? 1 page wide, and they want it to be 1 page tall. Now, if you look at this scale, it's grayed out because we've told it how to scale it. But this used to say 100%, and we could have tried to guess at what the percentage should be, but Excel just figured that part out. Now, let's look at the print preview. I'm just using my print preview button. If not, you can go through as if you're going to print. Now, if I look towards the bottom, this is now 1 page. Yes, these dates are very small. Then maybe that's okay for this because I just really, these are probably going to be checks anyway. Is the student here, you know, I put a little check mark or something. But I'm really interested in this sign-in area right here. And I don't have to worry about those 3 names that were on another piece of paper. So that's scaling really nice. And you saw the flexibility. Maybe you want it to be 2 pages wide and 1 page tall. So you have a lot of options there. The final part of step 18 is on this page layout tab. We're going to go to sheet options, and you see that's the next one over. And in this area, we can display headings just in the view and or printing. It's really important to understand that these are 2 different things. Here's what I mean. Because we told these cells to freeze, it doesn't mean they'll be frozen in the print. So just because we can see completely across the spreadsheet, we can still see column A. It doesn't mean that we'll continue to see column A when we print. Excel views the viewing and the printing as separate configurations. So we can see that. Here, you can see that for the view, we see the grid lines, don't we? And we see headings up here. Well, they want us to add grid lines to the print. Tell you a little secret. In the solution file, you know how we can see ABCs and, 1, 2, 3s, the rows and the columns? Because they're printing the headings also. How about that? All we did is under grid lines, we checked the box for print. Now let's print preview. So much easier. The students can see what line they're supposed to sign on. If you're the teacher, you can scan this list very quickly. And obviously we're doing this for students, but this could be any kind of sign-off for reports, for projects, for minutes to a meeting that you're circulating. So you can use this in a variety of ways. Excellent. Let's go back to our instructions. That was step 18. I think we did each part of that. Let's scroll up and on to step 19. It says we only want to print the part of the worksheet that we're going to use for attendance. And that is cell A1. Let me move this over so you can see. That was cell A1 through C. So we're not printing, remember, column B, which had the student ID numbers. A1 through C, the sign-in. So we're going to select it, right? Select those cells, A1 through C26. And on the File tab, we're going to have an option under Settings to print the Active Worksheet button or to select Print the Selection. And if your instructor has directed you to print the attendance sign-in sheet, click Print. Your instructor has not instructed you to do that. You do not need to give me any pieces of paper, okay? You've done the settings, and so the automatic grader will see that you've done the settings. This is learning for knowledge. This is important. You need these tools. I'm going to select cell A1 all the way up here at the top because I want all this information. I'm scrolling down until I can see C26, Shift, click. So now I've selected all those cells. They want me to go to print. So I'm going to click on File. This is our traditional method, and Print. And under Settings, look at all the settings that you have. Excel has special settings. One of them is this Print Active Sheets, but click the little drop-down arrow. Here's where you'll find Print Selection, and I'm going to select that. And look at the preview over here to the right. So, as tiny as that was before, it's much bigger now because it has scaled and we have less data to show. So we don't have to worry about trying to display all those columns. Excel adjusted for that. Isn't that something? I'm not sure why they wanted us to include cell A1, but they did. They wanted all of that. So there it is. Okay, do not print that. We've seen it. I'm clicking the back button so that we're back to our spreadsheet. We've done several things where we're really just looking at information, but let's go ahead and save. And let's go back to the instructions. But isn't that cool that you can just select cells and print just what you selected? Now let me scroll this up a little bit. It says at the end of the semester, you will need to print all the attendance records to turn into the administration office. Let's set this up for the 103 class worksheet. So we're going to select FIN 103 worksheet and hide the attendance sign-in column by right-clicking column C and selecting hide. And you know how to do that. I'm going to move this out of the way. Let's go over to this 103 worksheet. Remember on 104 we hid the student ID numbers. Now we're going up to column C. We're going to right click and hide. How about that? And save. Right after clicking that save button, my power went out. I'm glad we had saved our work at every step along the way. I've logged back into SimNet, so let's continue. We had just finished step 20, so I'm going to check that box. We're moving on to step 21. And in step 21, it says that we're going to modify the worksheet so that column A and rows 1 through 8 print on every page. So we're going to do that under page layout, and we're going to separately kind of freeze the rows and freeze the columns. But I don't want you to get confused in thinking that the view of Excel is the same as the printing of Excel. So let's just briefly remember this. We're currently on worksheet FIN 103, but when we were on FIN 104, you may recall that we were on the page layout tab, and when we looked at this, we looked at page setup, we looked at scaling, and we looked at sheet options. And under sheet options, you could see a very clear distinction between what it can be displayed in the view, like headings and like grid lines, and what can be displayed for the printing. So we at that time adjusted this for the print. Well, now in step 21, again, we're on this FIN 103 worksheet. We want these names, these student names, to display on every page. and we want the columns to display, to repeat, at least these top columns, columns 1 through 8. So that in particular would include the student name and student ID and across from there. So let me show you rather than tell you. Remember our print preview button that we added? I'm going to click on that. And this is a 4-page document. And on page 1, I see the student names. But as I advance to page 2, I only see the week. I don't see the names. So it would be kind of confusing. I would constantly have to lay the papers, side by side. So we want those names in particular to print on every page. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to go to this page layout ribbon. We've already explored a number of buttons along the top. This time we're looking at print titles. I'm going to click that. An interesting thing about this dialog box is that it has many tabs, and some of these tabs you may recognize as buttons in the ribbon. So when I look at margins, you might anticipate the same things that you saw in this drop-down box, but what you actually get is much more detailed settings. For example, you can center your spreadsheet on a page. You can finely control these margins and even the amount of space the header takes up inside that margin. So you can change the orientation. You could adjust the scaling in this place. You can even customize your headers and footers without going to page view and perhaps with a few more settings. But when we came into this dialog box, it took us directly to the sheet. We can see, first of all, that we could control the print area. Earlier in this exercise, we selected a range of cells, and when we went through the steps to print, it was at that point we said print only the selection. Well, we may want to routinely print only a certain range of cells. So if we want to do that, we can tell Excel right here what is the range of cells, and we can define that as the print area, and it will print only that area until we change it. Now, down below that is what we're here for, print titles. What rows do we want to repeat, and what columns do we want to repeat? Well, I'm going to click inside the rows area, so my cursor is flashing there, and I'm simply going to drag from A1 to A8. When I release my mouse button, I'm back in this window, and this is kind of an interesting notation because we're used to seeing a cell like A1 through A8. But the question is, what rows do you want me to repeat? So we're only identifying row numbers, and you can see that's an absolute reference, $1 through $8. Now I'm going to specify the columns, and the column that they want us to repeat is just column A. So I've clicked in this space, and I'm going to click anywhere in column A. You see the marching ants, but you also see over here to the side, $A through $A. So in other words, what column is it? It's column A, and that's an absolute reference. So that is all they want us to do in this particular dialog box. I do want you to see that you have many options. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to save that. And I am curious to see, what does this look like? And there was a print preview button that we could have clicked on, but let me go ahead and bring that up so you can see. Now it's a 5-page document, so as I click across, it's 5 pages because I can't fit as many weeks on a page on the subsequent pages because my names are showing on each and every page. All right, let's go back. We were just demonstrating that. That was step 21. Oh, step 22 is a long one. It says preview how the worksheet will look when printed and make adjustments from the print page to keep the report to 4 or fewer pages. So we saw when we previewed it that it actually went to 5 pages. So I'm going to check that because we did the preview. Now, what is it telling us? If necessary, click the print selection under settings and select print active sheets. Click the show print preview button. Okay, and in other words, what they're saying is to show the print preview. Note that the current settings will cause the worksheet to print on 5 pages. So we've done those steps. Let me scroll down just a little bit. Now, here are some settings that we need to change. Under settings, we're going to click portrait orientation and we're going to change that to landscape. It looks like we're going to change the margins to custom margins, and we're going to, scale that a little bit. Oh, and speaking of scaling, it says under settings, click no scaling and select fit all rows on one page. So let's jump into that, because there's obviously many more settings that we can address here. So we're on our page layout ribbon, and under orientation, we want to change that to landscape. Under margins, to select custom margins. Okay, so see how we're back in this page setup dialog box, and now we can really control this precisely. It says at the top, at the bottom, at the left, and at the right, we want this set to 0.5 inches. So I'm clicking once up here, once down here, once here. Now that says 0.45, and we want that at 0.5. So I'm selecting that text and making sure that says 0.5. On the right, I've got the same problem, so I'm going to select that text and replace 4.5 with just 5. Now, the headers are fine. They're currently default at 0.3, and that is fine. I'm going to click OK. They also tell us that we need to change the settings, and as I reread the directions, I realized that they were guiding us through making these changes under the print menu. As usual, in Microsoft, there are many ways to change settings. So they were showing us some of these settings that we could change to landscape here, and that we could change some of our margin settings here by going to custom margin. But I prefer actually the way that I showed you. I think that is more consistent with how things work in the industry, and it gives you more access to the configuration settings. But down here where it says scaling, and right now it says no scaling, they want us to change this to say fit all rows on one page. So I'm going to click that. And look at that. It changed this to 2 pages. Now, I do really like that, and I want to show you a little bit of the difference. So if I exit out of this, you may remember we had scaling here. And if I use the launcher, and I really like to go into this from the launcher, look at this. It pulls up this exact same dialog box. Well, we could have adjusted by putting in a percentage, and we could have adjusted in a way that's very similar to what we did last time, which is we said how many, let me cancel this for a minute. We put in before how many pages. We said 1 page wide and 1 page tall, and remember how small everything was? Well, now you can see the settings have gone to automatic and versus 1 page tall. So that's a really good way to set that when we don't know how many pages wide it's going to be. We just know how many pages tall. So I could set it here, but I rather like that you can do this as part of the printing by clicking on this drop-down box and going directly to fit all rows on one page. Okay, so that, I think that's fantastic, and you see that it remembered that, so that's excellent. We've accomplished these steps, and we learned some different dialog boxes. Oh, I need to go back to the worksheet, but let's look at step 23, because that's our last step before we close and submit. We need to modify the worksheet page breaks so that weeks 1 through 8 print on the first page and weeks 9 through 16 print on the second page, because it's only a 2-page document now. So we're going to use this page break preview or page break preview view by clicking the page break preview button on the status bar. It says if necessary, we can scroll. Let me walk through this with you because this is really, really powerful and you are going to use this all the time in your professional work with Excel. So I'm clicking back to get out. And what they're saying is that we need to change where the page breaks. Well, where does the page break? If I print preview, right now, look at this. I go week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I've got the Wednesday of week 10, but not the Friday. So I would constantly have to be going back and forth between pages. If I go to the next page, I see that I have plenty of room for week 10 to be fully on the second page. So I would really like it to break, as they say, after week 9. So let's look at that. I'm going to get out of this. Down at the bottom, where they have display settings, we have looked at normal, we've looked at page layout, and the third button is page break preview, and I'm going to click on that. Wow. So what is this? This is a bird's eye view of our spreadsheet as if it's on a layout table for a magazine. And these blue edges are the end of the worksheet because remember, Excel goes through XFD columns and has 1,000,000+ rows. So it's not going to print all of that space. You know, in Microsoft Word, if we have extra pages, it prints them. So this is what Excel has defined as the print area. And this dark blue border, we could adjust it. If we only wanted just a small part of this to print from, basically from now on until we change it, see how I just adjusted that? That is now the new print area. Of course, I don't want that. So I'm just dragging this blue bar all the way back to the end of my work. When I look at these pages, I also see a dotted blue line running up and down. And this is the one that cuts right in between week 10. So why is that line dotted? It's because we've run out of paper. There's only so much space on the paper, and it has to take into account our margins and, of course, our headers and footers. So it's just simply run out of room. When I put my mouse over that dotted line, if I drag to the right, it's not really going to help because it's not going to create any more paper. But I can press and drag that just a little bit over to the left. Do you see how now it's a solid blue line? And that means that I have inserted this hard page break at that point. So kind of neat. Now this is obviously not the only way to do that, but let's see where we are in our instructions. We went to page break preview, said if necessary we need to scroll to columns T through Y. And okay, so T through Y is where the problem was. Okay, and click in cell T1, and they wanted us to use the breaks button. So let me show you that. They have a click in cell T1, so we can do that. And they want us to observe how we've changed the page. Since they are showing you the buttons, I want to show you that too. Of course, I showed you how you can just kind of drag that. What they're talking about with the buttons is, what if I wanted to insert another page break, let's just say, and maybe I want to separate the pages right after week 5. You know, it's possible that my school has 5-week progress reports. So maybe I want to put a separator after week 5. When I put my mouse up on top of let me get it on top of the column. So I'm on top of M, column M, and I have the downward pointing arrow. I'm going to right click, and just like when we were in our normal view, we have all kinds of menu options. But in this particular view, page break preview, we have an additional option. We have several additional options. See this group down here at the bottom? We can insert a page break. we can reset all the page breaks. You know, that's really handy because sometimes you can screw them up. And if you really get messed up, just reset all page breaks. We could set that print area. Instead of by dragging those blue borders around, we could just type in the range. We could reset the print area. Maybe I should do that just so that, you know, I didn't mess anything up for the SimNet grader. So that looked like it was okay. I could reset, you know, again, all page breaks. See how it put that back? Okay. Let me right click up there again. I could even go into that page setup dialog box. So only in this particular view do you see all that. So using the instructions from the book here, they wanted us to click in cell T1. So I have clicked there. And I'm going to right click on top of that and insert a page break. So I this time right clicked on top of the cell and I'm going to insert page break. So you see what it did? Remember when we were freezing the cells or the columns in the rows just for our viewing? We went one past the row and one past the column, so that we then selected freeze and everything above and to the left froze. Well, this time we kind of did the same. We went to cell T1, which is one past where we wanted that page break. We were up here in row 1. And because we were in row 1, it understood that that page break was to go across. We could also do a page break, you know, horizontally. We would just select the row. And I guess what I'm pointing out is, just like when we split the screen, we clicked in the first row, that forced it to make a vertical split. If we had clicked cells in the middle, we could have gotten something else. Best practice, pro tip, from my perspective, right click up on the row. That way you know you're inserting the break in that location. Right click directly on, I'm sorry, I said row and I meant column. Right click directly on the row and insert, and that way you know you're inserting across the row. Okay? So be bold, get your mouse up here on top of the column or out here on top of the row. If you put the page break in the wrong place, you saw we can drag this to where we want it. Save that. We got a nice lesson there on those page breaks and how those are used professionally. And that was our last step. So now we need to save, close, and submit. So I'm going to move this out of my way. I'm going to make sure, they didn't tell us to change out of this page break preview. I will remember Excel remembers how you saved the document. So if I was sending this to my boss, this is how my boss would receive this. And I don't want my boss to look at it like that. If anything, I would want my boss to look at it in what's more normal, the normal view. So I think I'm going to change back to that. I'll tell you also, it tends to be a good practice unless you really want a particular cell highlighted by selecting it. Go ahead and press Control Home so that you're up at the top. These are just, again, kind of best practices. Save this because it remembers that setting. Close that. We definitely want this closed. I'm going to go ahead and open my Excel 4 folder. I've pushed it over to the side a little bit so that I can easily drag and drop to submit. So here's my SimNet window. I'm going to click anywhere on the page and then Control Home. We downloaded. We've done the work. Now it's time to upload. I'm going to ensure that I am submitting the correct file by simply dragging it and dropping it on SimNet. So am I ready? Are you ready? Let's submit. 100%. Do we get to do the dance again? We get to do the dance 100%. Once again, folks, if you did not get 100%, go back and compare your screen to my screen at each step along the way. If you can't find the arrow, sometimes it's just worthwhile to start over and go through the steps with me again. You'll be finished before you know it. Thanks, folks.